Hey guys, JB here. Just wanted to give you guys a small disclaimer. This episode was recorded way back in August of 2024, and I just noticed that there is some echo within the audio. So if you hear that, I apologize, but I hope you guys enjoy this episode with Bryce Buchanan. Hey, what's going on, guys? JB here with Code Fellowship, and welcome to the Code Fellowship podcast where purpose meets function. I'm glad to have another guest on the show here. His name is Bryce. I'll let him introduce himself fully. He is someone that we actually got on the show not so long ago, but never made it online because we just felt called by the Lord to redo that episode and be able to present a topic that's not just specific, but one that will be encouraging and a format in which I'm sure the Lord would wanted us to have presented it at the time. So, without further ado, welcome to the show, Bryce. Introduce yourself. What's your name? Where you're from? What do you do? And how do you intersect your faith with your tech work?
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Bryce Buchanan. I am a software developer out of Norman, Oklahoma, which is it's a suburb of the Oklahoma City metro. I am a software developer for a group called Covenant, and they create software to help people who are trying to break addictions to pornography. And specifically, I work on the client side, so with the Android applications. Yeah, and I've just been loving that. Been doing that for about a year and a half now. And so how my faith and tech intersect is, well, my company is very Christian based. It was founded by a Christian man, and a lot of us have that same faith that we share, both in work and out of work. And yeah, that's really our audience, is helping Christians to break free from pornography addictions. So yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I've had my fair share of using Covenant Eyes back when I was in the military,
Cool.
the Navigators military group, on posts back in Hawaii. The My mentor, Jim Cameron, he actually introduced it to us, and we didn't only just use it for obviously being accountable for explicit content, but all kinds of explicit content, and just like the screen time, like how much. Like I think the best use case was how much time we spent on our phones more than
Yeah.
in the Bible. So
Mm.
that's been another way that we have used Covenant Eyes, which is obviously outside of its primary goal, but it is a good way of using it still.
Yeah.
Um, I know that we got connected, I think, because our mutual friend is Cam, right?
Hmm.
Cameron.
Yeah.
Um,
Cameron Pack.
yeah. So did you guys work together at some point, or just live near each other?
A little bit of both. We both worked for Life Church, him
Okay.
for YouVersion app and me for Life Church proper. So we knew each other kind of in passing. We never really worked together on anything, but yeah, we're friends on LinkedIn, and I think he liked something from Code Fellowship or from you specifically about trying to find people to interview. And I said, hey, I've never been on a podcast, but
Oh
I
yes.
I feel like I have a good story, and I love what I do, and I want to encourage other people.
Yeah, that
So
was I got a lot of people sign up, and then like life was happening for them and life was happening for me. So like that list dwindled down, and but yeah, let's talk a little bit more about you.
sure.
Like how did you get into your faith, and what does that look like? How have you been intersecting that with your work? I know you said a little bit like you worked for Life Church directly, not necessarily for the YouVersion Bible app.
Hmm.
Um, but you work for Life Church directly, and now you're at another faith-based organization. Um, what does that look like? But before you get to that, how did you get there?
Yeah. So how did I get to Life Church, or just how did
Like
I
just your
get to my
faith
faith?
and into
Yeah.
tech, yeah, as you
Yeah.
were navigating that into tech.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in a Christian home, which has been a huge blessing. Both my parents believed in Jesus, and they drug me and my siblings to church pretty much Sunday, Wednesday, whenever. whenever they were going, we were there. And so it instilled in me a desire to be in the church, which I know is not the case for a lot of people who grew up that way, where they were dragged to church, but they didn't want anything to do with it. But yeah, when I was entering into high school and then later into college, I kind of came to a head of like, do I believe this thing that my parents have believed all of their life? Like, is this something that actually means something to me? And so I kind of wrestled with that in college. Like, all right, I'm out on my own. I can make my own choices. I don't have to go to church if I don't want to. But I don't know what exactly led me there, but I decided that I believed in Jesus, and I believed that, I believed in, I just believe in Jesus, and I want to be part of a church, and I want to encourage other Christians and live in community. So, I just always never really had a reason to doubt, which has been a huge blessing, because I know that's not the case for many people.
Praise God.
Yeah. So how I got into tech is I've always liked working with my hands. So I've on occasion taken apart computers and tried to put them back together. Sometimes
Same.
I was successful, not always. But I'm also pretty ADHD, and I feel like a lot of us engineers are ADHD and like jump back and forth from different stuff. But yeah, when I was going to college, I didn't have a serious direction, except that I wanted to work with computers. So I kind of bounced back and forth between majors, started in computer engineering, which is basically computer science and hardware kind of mashed together and like how they intersect. Switched around, went to like a business computers, like management information systems. Eventually came back to computer engineering and got my bachelor's and master's in that. And so I thought for a long time I was wanting to do like network engineering or something with like directly to hardware, like plug Ethernet cable into computer and then watch it work. But the Lord led me to a program with Life Church called the Engineering Leadership Program, which was basically a way to help engineers to grow in their skills and in their communication and all these different things you need to be an engineer. But you're not quite at that, software level 1 yet. You're not ready to contribute to projects without oversight. And so I got to Life Church. I was placed on a team that was doing a lot of mobile app work and a lot of web work for the church proper, not for YouVersion. So I jumped onto different projects. I did some Spring Boot applications, did some React work, and eventually I landed on iOS. And that's where I really just started to take off and really love what I was doing. So I eventually was hired on as a full-time iOS engineer.
Very nice.
Working on their generosity features, so helping people to be unencumbered in being able to tithe and be irrationally generous. So I was there for a little bit. My wife and I felt like we needed to go back to Norman. We felt called back to the church that we were at previously before I got a job with Life Church. And so we moved back to Norman. I worked remotely for them for a couple of months and then eventually transitioned into my job with Covenant Eyes. And they asked me to do Android work.
I was just about to ask you, because you mentioned iOS development, and then now you're doing Kotlin development. So how that transition went?
So it's a funny story, kind of. I have Kotlin experience like all over the whole everything. So I've done it a little bit with Spring Boot, so in the API level, and then whenever I was with Life Church, they use a Kotlin multi-platform like business layer. So it's Kotlin code that's shared between the Android and iOS apps. So I had some experience there. But whenever I originally applied to Covenant Eyes, it was for a Mac developer role. So they were using Swift, Objective-C, regular C, things like that. And so I was going to go for that because I know Swift, I could do that. And then about halfway through the interview process, the hiring manager asked, "Hey, would you think about Android?" I thought, how hard could it be? It's still mobile. It's kind of similar. So, yeah, I was like, yeah, absolutely. I would love to. And so got hired on, started learning as much as I could about Kotlin and Android. And I really think that's my sweet spot now. I really enjoyed iOS, but I think Android is, just for me, it's a lot more fun. It's a lot more open on what you can do. the IDE is a lot faster than Xcode, which I think any iOS developer would agree with. But yeah, Xcode's just very slow. But that's my soapbox. So.
You heard it here, folks. You heard it here.
Yep.
So in terms of like the similarities between the languages, how similar are they? Or was it not? And was it just like by God's grace, He provided the wisdom and the discernment, the clarity to get through learning the new language? I've always felt like I have difficulties in the past, and then I need to, or sometimes I just get overwhelmed because I'm a type of person. It's like I get obsessive or super committed to something, and I need to learn it like every nook and cranny. But over the years, I've gotten better to like only learn what I need and then expand on it, but also seek out the Lord for wisdom, so that way I'm not overwhelmed. So how did you process that time?
Yeah, well, definitely grace of God, 100%. I have had some, yeah. There's no way I could have been doing this without His guidance. As to the similarity of the languages, I like them both. I feel like they're both kind of, how would I describe it? They both kind of have the feel of an object-oriented language like Java or C++, but they have a more modern spin on it. It's like kind of like, for Kotlin, it runs on the JVM, the Java Virtual Machine, which is,
right,
if I remember correctly. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, so it's like Java, but more modern. Like if Java and JavaScript kind of had a baby together. And whereas Swift feels like JavaScript, an kind of modern language with an Objective-C or C++ or something like that. So yeah, they're both fairly they're more flexible and easier to write, in my opinion, than an older language like Java or C++. They still have, speed and performance that you would get from something like Java. So
yeah, it's like the paradigms are very similar. Methodologies may have shifted a little bit, but having those concepts are very important. So let's talk about like, the mission behind on what you're doing at Covenant Eyes. Like, I know that this is an application that helps, battle the addiction to explicit content. And I wanted to touch upon, I know that we talked about it a little bit in the last time when we recorded, but we felt moved to talk about it a bit different this time. Not just like, the sexual explicit content, but just any type of addiction. And how do you see technologies like Covenant Eyes or any other ones, because there are other ones out there, whether they're secular or Christian based, how do you see that improve? Does it hinder the person, right, to stop their being addicted, or do you think that it continues feeding on to the use of their phone and losing touch with reality?
Man, came out the gate swinging with that question. That's a really good question. Something really important to consider. Because if I'm just building this app and it's not actually helping, then what am I doing? Right? Yeah, I think that pretty much anyone at Covenant Eyes, myself included, would say that the apps themselves are not the full solution.
Amen.
We should not be fully depending on Covenant Eyes or any other product to break our addictions, because as humans, us developers are going to mess up and we're going to fail, and there's going to be circumventions and ways that we can get around the app. And so if you're constantly searching for that way to get around the app and you're constantly just exploiting these loopholes, then it's doing you no good. You're just paying for a service that doesn't work. When an application or some sort of program like that is paired with accountability and like actually talking with other believers or with other friends, someone who can hold you accountable to what you're doing, that's when it starts to actually like set in and be effective in your life. Because we're never meant to go through these struggles in life alone. We're always meant to, bring the hard things to our brothers and sisters in Christ. Um, and yeah, I think it's not to say that the apps are not important, that we only need to do community. I think community by itself is effective. However, these apps, Covenant Eyes especially, can help in that process to, in a moment of weakness, make it 100 million times more difficult to access that kind of material. So
Yeah, I think that's a really good concise answer. And if we take a little bit of analogy from the Christian faith, like the Bible is our objective source of truth. It's God revealed to us. It's God speaking to us. And then obviously there are other experiences that we have with God that are described from the Bible as could happen to us as believers when we're in the Holy Spirit. But there are also other extra biblical sources that helps support a lot of the historical context of the Bible, a lot of the way of living of the Christian life, even like secular philosophy also has helped like Christian scholars and Christian philosophers really support a lot of the Christian values. And it's something that very important, like you said, is like we can't be dependent on these apps. And I thought about Galatians 5, 16 through 18, where it says, the title says, keep in step with the Spirit. But I say, this is Paul speaking to the Galatians, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. For these are opposed to each other, to keep you from doing the things you want to do. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. And then we know like the rest of it. I encourage people to read the rest. It talks about like the evidence of the flesh, and then the evidence of someone who's filled with the Spirit and keeping in step with the Spirit. But I like where 25 says, if we live by the Spirit, let us also keep in step with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking one another, envying one another. So here Paul is very concise of the importance of not only listening to the gospel, right? Not only listening to what people are saying through different mediums, whether it's through writing or verbal communication, but seeking out the Spirit, and so that we can defeat the battle against the flesh. So it's great that you point that out, because like Covenant Eyes is just an assistive tool. Like the Holy Spirit could also guide you to using it, so that way it gives that extra security, that extra assurance. In God's providence, it's a tool that God could use as well for one's life, but it's not the ultimate power that we need.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. So have you had like any battles like with addiction and have to have and you were led to use tools like Covenant Eyes or any other tool that help with accountability? Accountability is such an important thing within the Christian body. So how have you seen the use of an application, right? Like a lot of people who build applications or products, there's a saying that, um, like a person doesn't necessarily use the product that they make, right? So, is it something that you follow that, or do you actually use a product day to day, so that you may learn how users are using it, or even yourself may need to implement certain features?
Yeah, so I do have it on my phone. Um, because partially because definitely believe in what we're doing and I believe it works. And also just to see how it's doing in the wild. So I actually made the switch from an iPhone to an Android. So
Look at
I'm working with
that.
a working with a Samsung Fold.
Nice.
Yeah, just because part of it was it's a really dope looking phone and I love it and I can watch Netflix really well on it. But also because we needed a little bit more coverage over Samsung and over foldable phones because while it works, we don't have as much visibility into that because
Hmm.
we a lot of times we work with Google phones and just like normal
Just straight up
size phones.
slabs. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So being able to see how it's doing in the wild and testing it on, I guess non normal, not non normal,
Non-traditional
non traditional. Yeah,
formats. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Working with different formats helps us to serve our clientele better. Be able to adapt to all certain sorts of circumstances. So,
Yeah,
so
I
yes,
think
I use my product.
cool. Yeah, I think that's what makes Android development unique. Is because like iOS ecosystem doesn't have a foldable phone, right? So
No,
like with the iOS with the Apple ecosystem is really more about continuity. I think that's where
hmm
they really have excel and have built a market around. That's why I have an iPhone, I have a Mac Studio, a MacBook Pro, an iPad
yep,
because what I can continue doing my work from one place to another. But when it comes to like Android, now it's like what I'm doing in the front of my phone can I do also when it's fully open.
right,
so
yeah,
so then it's a challenge. I do see that as a challenge. Like can Covenant Eyes or any of the accountability apps or addiction freeing apps still work when I move over to like this open tablet mode? Will it still track, and scan for the explicit content that I may end up scrolling into or
right.
getting distracted into? So yeah, that's
Yep.
that's really interesting. Do you guys take advantage also of like screen time technology? I know that Android also has that now within the last couple years, kind of like iOS. I feel like that's something that it also pertains to the addiction realm when it comes to like
Right,
technology and the content that we consume because it doesn't have to be explicit. Like I said, it could just be doom scrolling through an
right,
application and
yep.
deterring us away from being in the scriptures. Do you guys have something like that in Covenant Eyes that maybe I don't know about because I don't remember much about Covenant Eyes. It's been a couple
Right.
years.
Yeah. To my knowledge, I don't think any of our clients make use of like a screen time API
Okay.
for the purposes that you're thinking of. It's definitely like we're always kind of looking ahead, looking to all the different APIs and different versions that are being released by
Mm,
Microsoft, Google,
yes.
Apple, all of them. So it's always kind of in the back of our mind of like, do we want to make use of this? And I I think that the choice we've come to is that we try and stay narrowly scoped, at least right now. This is our business plan is stay scoped on
Mm-hmm.
this one issue of internet pornography, not necessarily of internet addiction. Because right now we're helping serve people with pornography addictions. That's not to say in the future we might not go more holistic and look at it. And I would be in favor of going more holistic and helping because it's all interconnected, right? Internet
Mm-hmm.
pornography,
Nowadays.
internet addiction, everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's so connected because everything's online. Um, I'm going down a rabbit trail, but yeah, yeah, wait, yeah,
Yeah. I yeah, it's refreshing when companies do stay scoped, right?
yeah,
And I think like for me, it's something that I'm learning in this season as well as I'm building my own company. Like I have an idea,
uh-huh.
I want to um, put out. Now I have to develop like find out what the problem is I'm trying to solve, and then the solution that I'm bringing to the problem. But then I think about it's like how how much can I can I go down, like scope it down? Because I don't want to be a generalist. I want to be an expert. I don't want to overwhelm myself. I want to have
Yeah.
a natural conversation and excitement for something I have a passion for,
Mm-hmm.
while still also glorifying God and exalting Him in the way that I work, instead of being overwhelmed with so much like context switching or information, and then not being able to produce work that is glorifying to God with
Yeah.
my time that He's given me. So with the time that He's given me, so I I agree with that, and that's actually really good that Covenant Eyes is solely focused right on breaking free of the pornography addiction, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
really sad, just the nature of that. When I was addicted to corn, as like a lot of YouTubers would say,
Mm-hmm.
I it was because of trauma that I had as a child,
Yeah.
and then when someone presented it to me growing up, I was like a little kid, and then it was easy for me to like get sucked into it. And then like as a teenager, I became rebellious because I was chasing that immorality in my life.
Yeah.
So I was not keeping in step with the spirit, as like Paul calls us to. And I used to go to church. Growing up, I read the Bible and all these things, but I wasn't. How can I say this? I wasn't like aligned fully. Like I wasn't fully committed,
Yeah.
because I did not know what that looked like. My parents were in a perfect example of what being committed to God looked like. It was more like, hey, you got to respect the things of God. Right? That's very different than actually living out for Christ. So
Yeah.
I do appreciate when I eventually found out about this tool through my mentor, and it took a while. It took a while. Like I'm not lie. Like I have turned it off, right, so that I can
Yeah.
consume explicit content of any kind because my flesh desired it. But eventually, like I came to the reality that it destroys me. It empties me. It When I got married, I would be honest with my wife, and I would tell her like, hey, I ask for your forgiveness. I apologize. Like, because
Yeah.
it not only like when you're single, but when you're married, it affects you. Like, you don't have to necessarily be physically cheating on your wife,
Mm-hmm.
like just by having lust. Right? 'Cause the scripture says like looking at another person with lust, it's already adultery. And
Right.
then we see like spiritual adultery as well. We're performing like double the adultery, right? Like
Yeah.
the one against our spouse, and then the one against the spirit of God that is supposed to be dwelling in us, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
we're constricting it and then feeding to that addiction. How what kind of studies like have you guys have done to make sure that this tool have survived the years that it has? Because I've seen when it first started, and then just a consistent advancement. Like evil always tries to advance in many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you guys? You can speak from your own personal experience as an Android developer. Like when you're developing, are you guys always like modifying or refining a feature to go against just the new ways that the world is trying to push this type of addiction?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Trying to think how to best answer that. Yeah, I think a lot of it is patching holes in our
Mm-hmm.
system where people have found circumventions. And we have a really, really good member care
Oh.
um, member care department that is basically they're our support, and they interface with the clients all the time and will pray with them. They will help them find
Mm-hmm.
technical solutions, hear their complaints, hear where they're being able to get around the software, and that comes to us as developers through different channels, and so we can see like, hey, this is a weird thing that we had no idea was going to happen, but it's happening. What can we do to fix that so that people aren't falling into that? So yeah, just listening to our users as best we can. We have a whole whole team devoted to user research and surveying our users just to find out, how they're using the app, what they wish the app would do, things like that. Yeah, I'm sure there's other studies being done, like market research. I'm just not very privy to that information. I just do what I'm told.
Yeah. Yeah. Typical employee. Look at you.
Yeah. I have ideas of my own sometimes, but
Yeah.
mostly listen to what others say.
Yeah. No, I get you. I get you. So how? Okay. Well, I guess the next question is like, what do you see yourself doing? To continue in the next 5 years, right? Do you see yourself being a part of this ministry that's very specific within the body of Christ and also within the faith tech space? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years to help be an advocate against, just the way that the world uses technology in an addictive way? Because it's not like, again, it's not about just like the explicit sexual content. Like you just mentioned, like it's so ingrained, right? Because you could be going on TikTok trying to find a recipe or someone but then you get like a random video, the first one, like some woman with like, her body part sticking out or some sort in a provocative way. And that's why I told my wife, like, why I didn't have TikTok on my phone a long time ago, because I would always just get like someone that's just, shaking their behind. As a friend. And that's after I have clicked on a video she sent me of a recipe. Like that's not, I don't even use TikTok in the first place enough and looking for that kind of stuff for it to even serve me that. I don't even like look for, pornography websites or explicit content of any kind to be able to be served that. So it's kind of weird how it does that, but lately it has gotten better. So I'm interested to hear where you find yourself in the next 5 years to combat that.
Yeah, I think the short answer is I don't know where I'm going to be. I know that the Lord has put a calling on my life to create software for good, specifically helping ministries and churches and small businesses to supplying them with the technology they need so that they don't have to think about the technology, and so that they can just do what they've been equipped to do, what the Lord has called them to do, and not worry about the technical side. So I don't know that I could be at Covenant for my whole life. I could be somewhere else in a few years. But I think just overall advocating for people to break free and for people to have a healthy relationship with technology. I think on a personal level, just staying up to date with what's going on in Silicon Valley culture, seeing like, why are these top executives from Meta or Google or different places like that, why are they sending their kids to tech-free schools? Why are they not allowing their kids to get social media until they're older? It's like they know something that we don't know. And just, keeping that information going. Like, people, think for yourself, why are these tech companies not practicing what they're preaching? And especially like I found out a couple months ago I'm going to be a dad.
Oh, so, congratulations.
Yeah. So I got a baby coming in February, and I'm just like, a lot of things going on in my mind is like, how do I want my family to relate to technology? Like, I don't want to give my child an iPad so early that they have this dopamine circuit in their brain where they can't function in public without watching YouTube Kids or something like that. It's like just like having all these different things in my mind of like, what is a healthy relationship to technology look like? Because healthy relationship to technology will greatly reduce your chances of, having an internet addiction or a pornography addiction, and just make it easier to relate to others, and be a part of society. So, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this stuff, but yeah.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah, I am in the same like phase and walk. I've seen a lot of like people in my family, how they would just give like their phone or just put something on so that the kid can just like be still. But at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, like, yeah, you're gonna give in, right? It's part of parenting. Like, you're trying to make it
Yeah.
easy for yourself, but I feel like that's what the devil does, as like a distraction of
Mm-hmm.
like influencing us to stray away from the position that we need to stand on.
Yeah.
And like, I don't like, nowadays, like, schools have laptops and stuff like that more consistently. When I was going to school, I had we had laptops as well, but we
Mm-hmm.
didn't use them for everything. We
Right.
had like a specific segment out of the day where we would go to a computer class,
Mm-hmm.
and then we would have a specific time where we would use the laptops to write English assignments, to do
Mm-hmm.
research. Right? If the library was not available, or the librarian wasn't inside the school, so we learned, even like for science as well, when we would have to do research there. But we were always learning out of books. We were always writing. We were always using these motor skills that are
Yeah.
uh, within the material world as well. But nowadays, I've noticed like technology has inundated itself more and more and more inside the school, to where now it privies our generation of children from writing well, from having proper thinking skills. Because there's nothing wrong in using the internet. I mean, I think
Right.
also as developers, like with the rise of like AI too, like that, I've used it as a teaching tool to learn languages quickly, but I've
Yeah.
also caught myself depending on AI to code things that I should be coding myself and failing at, so I can learn how to code it properly.
Oh yeah.
So then this generation of programmers moving forward are going to lose touch from the previous generations of brainiacs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it amazes me how some of the engineers prior to us, like, they can come up with the solution in a matter of seconds sometimes.
Oh
But
yeah.
now, like, for the current generation of developers, and I'm not speaking of all developers, but the ones that are very like AI dependent, there's no critical thinking skills.
Right.
So even when I do my best, like, when I'm using AI to help me in a way, I do my best to try to be discerning of what it's giving me, or if
Yeah.
it's exactly what I needed, and break it down. So it is a battle, because we're battling complacency, which is what the devil wants us to do, be
Mm-hmm.
very lukewarm about everything, instead of actually critically thinking of things and fighting the good fight.
Yeah.
So like, I totally understand that, and we'll be praying for that when you get there. It's too early, but we'll be
Yep.
praying for that as you get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, awesome. Well, I think we could start wrapping up this episode. We're coming to the end, but before we do, we're gonna go into our passing of the bread segment, where you can share breadcrumb, whether that is a shameless plug, how people can connect with you and be in fellowship with you, as well as if there's anything that you would like people to feel encouraged with, or a book, a movie, whatever it is. So feel free to take the time to share, and then we'll wrap up the episode.
Okay. Yeah. In terms of staying connected with me, I'm not very active on social media. I'm on LinkedIn every once in a while. I think it's like Bryce Buchanan 5. Um, my GitHub is B3PO96, I think. I don't
You're
know.
almost like a
I'm on
Star
the
Wars character over there on GitHub.
Yeah, that's my gamer handle from way back in the day. Is a whole story I don't want to get into with it. But yeah. And then as for breadcrumbs, I had some at the beginning of the podcast recording, and I've forgotten all of them. So I'm going to try and remember what they were.
In real
Oh,
time. In real time.
yeah, real time. Shoot. Uh, think, Bryce. Think. What do you like? I like a lot of things, but um, I guess a book that I'm reading right now is a book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. Matthew Walker, yeah, Dr. Matthew Walker. and he goes through all these different chapters talking about, you know, how how and why we sleep, like actually getting into the benefits of getting a full 8-9 hours of sleep a night.
Mm-hmm.
Talks kind of a bit about the evolution of sleep. I don't know how much of that to believe, but basically, but just like kind of comparing human sleep versus other members of the animal kingdom, how they sleep.
Oh, okay.
And there's a lot more to it too, about like, what is melatonin, what is it actually doing in your body, what is REM sleep and what is non-REM sleep, all those things. Just super
Mm-hmm.
fascinating for a nerd like me, to think about that kind of stuff. Um, yeah,
That's cool, actually.
yeah, I would, and there's two apps I want to talk about. One of them I would be remiss to not recommend, and that would be Covenant Eyes, the company I work for. They, I fully believe in our product, and I believe that our mission. I believe in our mission and what we're doing, and I think that it is an excellent deterrent if you're trying to break free from pornography, or if you just don't want to run across it at all. Um, so yeah, we're constantly trying to make our app better, and we're constantly trying to listen to our users and help them out. So I would definitely recommend them. And lastly, there's an app I use every day called Habitica, and it's an app for developers by developers, and it's basically helps to gamify the habits that you're trying to build and the things you need to do. So it's helped me keep track of when I've been trying to learn languages, or when I'm trying to remember to read the Bible or do different chores around the house that I need to do daily. And you can be a part of a small community, do quests together, and
Oh, that's
if
cool.
you do well, then your whole tribe benefits. But if you don't do well, everyone suffers. So it's a good kind of accountability, and it's super fun, super nerdy.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
so I
Yeah,
recommend that
that
too.
definitely send those links over
Yeah,
to me so that I can like you can send it via LinkedIn.
yeah,
So that way I can put in the show notes for those that are listening or in the video
yeah.
description for those that are watching. Um, but yeah, that's actually that's I think that's pretty much it. I've been trying to come up with my own breadcrumbs for a while, but
Mhm.
I always lose track. Always lose track of what I want to share. Recently, for my business, I actually got a Zen book because the first
Mm.
client that I'm working with uses the Microsoft stack for the backend, so I can't just willy nilly just go into like a Postgres database in the cloud or whatever.
Yeah,
um, on my MacBook, and it is not beneficial to try to do parallel computing on a MacBook. It's not the same, especially if you're like building an application and then it grows and then you got to query like massive amounts of data. Not saying that this
yeah,
has like a lot of data, but you never know, right? Like I could get a client that uses a Microsoft stack as well, and I'm at a crossroads. So recently, Best Buy had a good sale on laptops and specifically Windows laptops, and I got in on time.
right
So
on.
I made the business expense, but gonna be writing it off. It's almost very equivalent to my 14-inch MacBook Pro with M1
Wow.
Pro in
Okay.
it. So performance wise, it's doing pretty good. I would say the Apple one still beats it
Yeah.
by a margin in some ways, but they're very equivalent in what
Mhm.
it needs to be done. It uses like the new Intel Evo chip, which is supposed to be uh, comparable to the Apple Silicon chips, and then it has like Arc graphics, the Intel Arc graphics in it. It's been good. It's been good. It feels light, but the USB Cs are like in a weird place.
Uh,
Like when you got to charge, there's only like two USB Cs on the right side of the laptop. I wish there was like another one on the left side, but the fan vents there's some at the bottom, but the one that the exhaust one is to the left, and so like when you're typing, you could feel the hot air hitting your fingers.
yeah.
And it's a Windows laptop, so it'll start sounding like a little plain, but not as bad as like HP or Dell. I tell you that
Yeah.
much. But it's
Right.
been great. It's been great, and one thing that I've noticed is that I've always said like, how can people program off of one little display? And I've been doing that a lot lately. I have a super ultra wide right now in front of me, and and I've been appreciating just like using that little space, even though that I also have other mechanisms to do multi-display with like my iPad, with my Mac, or these two screens that you put over your laptop. But my focus is so much more centered when I'm using that little laptop display. So I wonder if like the super ultra wide is a big deterrent. It's like for my ADHD brain, it's like, oh, I have so much space, I can do more things. But in reality, I'm not doing a lot. I'm just like creating addiction to my brain for procrastination.
Yeah, yeah, it's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's my breadcrumb of the day. Check it out. It's a Asus ZenBook 14. It's really good for the money. I got it on a really good deal. So if you ever find a deal on it, make sure to go buy it. If you need it, not because you want it, right? But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you for listening to Code Fellowship, where purpose meets function. You can subscribe to us here on the YouTube channel so you'll be notified as well when we go live with a new episode. And also follow us on all major podcast platforms as well. We are also on Spotify, so you're able to listen and watch the video. And at the time of this recording, we have had 500 plays on the podcast. I'm not sure if that's equivalent to 500 downloads, but yeah, I screenshot it, and it's a really good accomplishment. Like halfway to 1,000. So I'm really excited for what God is doing with the podcast, and more people are coming onto the Discord community. So if you're looking for a community of Christian developers, you're more than welcome. The link will be on the show notes and also in the video description. But thank you so much for watching, guys, and listening. Thank you, Bryce, for being a part of this episode. I know you're not used to being on a podcast, but I'm sure this will be first of many. And I hope
That's
to
the
have
hope.
you. Yeah, and I hope to be in fellowship with you outside of the podcast. Thank you,
Yes, sir.
guys. Take care, and God bless.